the lighting right here. Hi and welcome to another gaming live stream. And straight off the bat from the last one, I've got this one come, and it's talking about Nintendo and what I would class them as a low tech success. So Nintendo very rarely go for high end games consoles, sort of pushing high CPUs and the things that Microsoft and Sony try and go for. Nintendo have far more success in low tech. So hence the reason for the title of this video is Nintendo low tech success. So we take it all the way back to things like the Game Boy. It was a mess. It was very low tech, mono screen. Well, pea green, olive green, whatever you call it, screen, in a time when everyone else was trying to push color, and it was a success. It was a massive success, and it's one of the first examples I can think of Nintendo really sort of pushing that low end technology to its advantage. So instead of trying to use the latest GPUs and the latest CPUs, they grab hold of tried and tested technology that is probably quite cheap to make, quite cheap to use, and then they use that. So that the chip I know in the Game Boy was a very old chip at the time, and it was quite cheap to pick up. And like I said, the most successful Nintendo consoles have been the ones that have not pushed the boundaries. So if we look at the GameCube, now the GameCube is a slight exception because it was quite a powerful console, especially in its generation, and it didn't do very well. It's not a big seller. I may have got this wrong, but it's about 14 million, I think, on the back of the N64, which again wasn't a massively successful console, and it also tried to push sort of some of the boundaries maybe, but then we move into the Wii. Now the Wii, it was drastically underpowered compared to the Xbox 360 and the PlayStation 3, which is the generation it was in. It really was just like a souped up GameCube with motion controls, and it's gone on to be one of the biggest selling consoles of all time, about 110 million units. So that was great, but then they tried to bring out the Wii U, a very powerful, a more powerful console than the Wii, brought in sort of HD graphics, and it flopped. Take a look at the Switch. The Switch is, I mean, it's a good console, don't get me wrong, but comparative to the other consoles in its generation, like the Xbox One and the PS4, it really does pale into significance in terms of technology. And yet it's now, I think it's the second best selling console of all time, a possibility that it will pip the PlayStation 2 to become the best selling console. So it's a little worrying what they're going to do with the Switch 2. If we take a look just again at the portable market, Game Boy was fantastic. Follow that with the Game Boy Color, low tech, quite successful. I think we could ignore the Game Boy Advance because it just was. It was a 32-bit handheld that tried to sort of break or sort of bring up the Game Boy era, because that dragged on a lot. We were still using 8-bit handheld consoles and being quite successful when we were looking at 32-bit home consoles. So the Game Boy Advance I've never had much. I've never been much of a fan of it. I've always thought it was just a bit of a tag on the end of the Game Boy. Then you get the DS. Now the DS, so the original DS, DS Lite, even DSi, fantastically popular. Probably the biggest selling portable console along with the Game Boy. But if you compare that to others in that generation. You get things like the PSP. The DS was absolutely poor in terms of tech, but the battery life was there, and Nintendo were able to bring in some kind of uniqueness that people would ignore the poor graphics and the poor everything else about the DS. So Nintendo build their success on consoles that are made with poorer technology or less technology. They don't try and go in for hard and fast. This is going to be amazing. This is going to blow your socks off. This is going to have 4K graphics and this, that, and the other. That is not Nintendo style. So the Switch, successful, underpowered. The Game Boy, successful, underpowered. The Wii, successful and underpowered. The DS, did I say the DS? Successful and underpowered. And yet you look at the other side of things. So the Wii U, that was a mess from start to finish. Great console, but it was a mess and not very successful, because they tried to ramp up and really make it more of a modern console. So that leads us really onto what Nintendo are going to do with the Switch 2. We don't really know much about it. We're hoping for some kind of March, April 2025 release. And are we going to just see a repetition of the Wii U, where it took all of the good things about the Wii and then speed bumped it? Are we going to see that with the Switch 2? If we do, then it really is a really tricky area, because the Wii U could play Wii games, so it made it backward compatible. In fact, it's probably one of the best ways to play Wii games via HDMI, but it just wasn't very successful. People didn't really take to it. A lot of people didn't really understand it at all. It was marketed really badly, and a lot of people just thought it was some kind of add-on for the Wii, didn't realise it was a whole new console. If you get the Switch 2 and it just becomes a speed bumped Switch, which hopefully offers backward compatibility, that will be one saving feature. Then you're going to run into the same sort of problems, I think, like I was speaking in my previous video, where you go from the PS4 to the PS5 and the PS5 to the PS6, just a speed bump, and it doesn't bring anything really new. Are we going to see that with the Switch and the Switch 2? Or is the Switch 2 still going to be vastly underpowered compared to its counterparts, which technically I suppose would be the Xbox Series X and the PS5? Nintendo are not going to make a portable console that can match that, so they've got to bring their own uniqueness to it, which they are very capable of doing. And hopefully, I mean, it's going to be more powerful than the Switch, but it's not going to be mind-blowing technology. It's not going to blow the PS5 and the Xbox Series X out of the water in terms of hardware and tech and graphics. It's going to do that in other ways, hopefully, and for the first time in a very long time, we're going to see two successful Nintendo consoles, one after another. We tend to have a hit and miss with Nintendo, so the Wii was a hit, the Wii U was a failure, the Switch is a hit. So is the Switch 2 going to be another failure, or is it going to be another sort of Nintendo, I'm going to call it a low-tech success, because it's going to be lower technology than whatever else, like the PS5, etc. So yeah, they do have a good history. They can make fantastic consoles without pushing the boundaries of technology, and for quite a lot of their consoles, that's been some of the selling point, especially on the portable side, because lower tech use increases battery life, and you just can't beat Nintendo on portable consoles battery capabilities. You can get like 40 hours on an original Game Boy on a set of batteries. The DS Lite, you can push 18, along with the DSi XL, you could push about 20 hours out of that on a single charge. Even the Switch, you can get sort of 7-8 hours out of it. That is decent for a portable console. You take something like the PSP or the Vita, and their batteries aren't that great. Steam Deck, same sort of thing. So Could we see Nintendo rectify their past mistakes and make 2 successful consoles in a row, using low tech technology, so not cutting edge, and that's really where Nintendo go. They're a law unto themselves. You've got Microsoft and you've got Sony fighting out who's got the best console, who can do this and who can do that. And there's Nintendo, sorry, absolutely raking it in with the Switch. 143 million, I think, was the last count, on a console that everybody says is underpowered. Everybody goes, it's just a Nintendo Switch, but it's been highly successful, and some of that is it's lower tech. It's their strategy. They don't push for that. They have their own unique way of selling things. So maybe we could. Let me know. What do you think?